Well, hello there. This is my YouTube site, and it's titled Restoring Truth because this is what this site is going to be about. Predominantly based upon the truth of the Bible and the truth that has been given to the Church of God. And because I feel that in this Laodicean era that there's been no growth or very little growth in the grace and knowledge of Jesus Christ, and that it was pretty much other doctrines and things were being introduced into the church, Protestant doctrines, and falling away and from the truth. And in this Laodicean era, we have a great deal of people who are trying to give people some hope, and yet in spite of that, there are many out here who are in Church of God groups and organizations that are actually assaulting the truth that is of the Bible, that can be understood. They have introduced doctrines into the church, and I'm talking about the leading ministers of these groups have been falling into error, and that they are not really faithfully serving the brethren. And that includes people that are the head of the Philadelphia Church of God, includes some people that are in the Living Church of God, includes people that are in the Restored Church of God, includes people that are of the Church of God preparing for the kingdom, and there are many others. And for the most part, many of them are hanging on to a lot of the error that was introduced by Herbert Armstrong, and have not been able to find their way out of that mess that was introduced by him. Not that he had all error, he didn't. He had the truth. He had many biblical truths, but he introduced some errors into the church that need to be taken out. Anyhow, I say, many subjects will be covered here on this site that cannot be covered in any of the churches of God. And in large part because there's just not a framework or an ability to do so. Many times they tell you, well, you just need to write up a paper and give it to us, we'll look it over, and we'll let you know. But there's no real discussion, there's no method for which people can discuss, even on the Sabbath. You have your little Hitlers, if I may use that term, walking around kind of spying on what you're saying, and then if they think it's getting out of hand, they go straight to the minister, and for long you are either put out of that organization and you can't discuss anything. So anyway, one of the first articles I think that I'm going to read from, I've gotten from a site. It was probably one of the first articles that I read on this particular website, and I will be using this website quite a bit because there's a great deal of information on it that I think that it needs to be, not only introduced on this website, but even brought out even further, even on a video. And I will read it, and I'll try to do it justice, and not try to, change it in any way. But I'll try to read most of this article because it's one that helped me a great deal. And I hope it will help many of you also. Hopefully I can get this done in a matter of time that it takes within the 15-minute time limit. But if not, I'll just make another part of it, and we'll go on into another segment. But probably the second discussion I'll have will be on church government, God's government, and what the differences are. And many of these Church of Gods believe that they have the right form of God's government. And I'm going to tell you they do not. But that will be probably a very lengthy study at a future time, once we get done with this portion that I have here. Like I say, this article was probably one of the first articles I read, and it's titled Truth or Silence. You can read the article, if I don't read the entirety of it on here today, on keithhunt.com. A very good website for biblical truth, but the only thing that I would perhaps not agree with is some of his history and environment articles. Then I will challenge that at a different time also. But other than that, biblical truth, great place to get the straight story. It says truth or silence. Watch out for church dictatorships. This article written by Arlene Carmen. And Mr. Hunt makes comment, a very fine study, written some years back, can't remember the year, forgotten I had it until I was going through my old files. There are still some church organizations in existence and people in them who need to take special note of this study. And so, again, I'm taking special note and bringing it to you and going to speak it to you in case you don't have the time to read it. Anyway, speaking the truth or keeping silent, which? Do you agree with every teaching of the church organization where you attend? Are you tired of being told you can't openly discuss doctrinal differences? What do the scriptures tell us to do? If a church organization believes that its members should only discuss the Bible in a way that confirms official church doctrines, is that allowing the congregation to speak the truth? This organization would say yes. Those in charge of the organization believe this is applying Paul's admonition of speaking the same thing in 1 Corinthians 1 verse 10. They believe they are keeping unity and preventing division within the church organization. Church leaders believe that anyone finding an error in doctrine being taught by that church organization should remain silent in order to protect the brethren from being confused. Their main concern is apparently not that someone believes something different than the official church doctrines, but that they will speak about it. Keeping your opinion to yourself is the approved way to deal with doctrinal differences. The leaders tend to believe that anyone who sees an error in a doctrine may have a motive of gaining a following, which in turn would draw members out of the organization, either one, into error, or two, away from the group. But aren't we to prove all things? That's what this next title is. Some church organizations believe the proper procedure for exposing error in their doctrine is to write a paper, which is then submitted to the ministry for evaluation. There are several steps in this procedure, which could take as long as 2 to 3 years to be completed. In the meantime, anyone who questions doctrinal truth must remain silent to others in the spirit of speaking the same thing and keeping unity. Is the organization correct in this belief? When anything is taught to us by an organization of men regarding God's truth, the thing we all must do is to prove it. As Paul admonishes in 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 21, but test and prove all things until you can recognize what is good. To hold to that, hold fast. And this is Amplified Bible throughout, unless otherwise noted. If we are to prove that we are being taught by a church organization where would we start this proving process? We must begin by examining why we are attending with a particular organization. A few reasons are, we may like the people. We may like what it teaches. We may believe it is the right place to be. We may believe it is doing the work. Whatever the reason, we must examine it by asking ourselves, is our reason for being there our own or God's? We must also ask ourselves, if we are worshiping God within a church organization, do we worship according to the rules of that organization? This is not referring to administrative details such as the time of services, the place, etc. Or do we worship God according to His standard? The answer is found in John 4, verse 24. God is a spirit, a spiritual being, and those who worship Him must worship Him in spirit and in truth. Reality. In our proving process, we have established that the standard for worshiping within an organization is worshiping in spirit and truth. But whose spirit and whose truth? The organization's or God's? Well, God's, of course. Then Peter and the apostles replied, we must obey God rather than men. Acts 5, verse 29. And I will add here, many people in the churches of God, in these Philadelphia, Living, Restored, many other churches of God, are following just the man. They're not really following God. They're not obeying God. They're obeying men. I continue. Even though the organization believes it is teaching God's truth, it must be proven against what is in the Bible. And the truth of the Bible must always prevail. And unfortunately, in 20 years, I have seen the Bible not prevail in many of the teachings of some of these churches of God. The men's ideas prevail. The meaning of truth, another title. To obtain a clearer picture of what the Bible means by the word truth is John 4:24. We must look at its meaning in Greek. The Greek word for truth in John 4:24 is, forgive me if I get this wrong, aletheia. Vine's Expository Dictionary of New Testament Words states this noun is used objectively signifying the reality lying at the basis of an appearance, the manifested, variable essence of a matter. Kramer, e.g., Romans 9:1, 2 Corinthians 11:10, especially of Christian doctrine, e.g., Galatians 2:5, where the truth of the Gospels denotes the true teaching of the Gospel in contrast to perversions of it. Romans 1:25, where the truth of God may be. And I think I'll have to end it right there and pick it up at another time because I'm out of time for this segment.